Ladies and gentlemen, every time you open your mouth without purpose, you give away something valuable. Not money, not time alone, but power. Power is not in constant expression. Power is in controlled expression. Many people believe that influence comes from speaking more, explaining more, proving more. But the truth is the opposite. The more you talk, the less weight your words carry. When everything is said, nothing is respected. You must understand this principle. Silence is not emptiness. It is containment. It is the ability to hold your thoughts, your plans, your emotions into the right moment. Because when you speak too much, you reveal your strategy before execution. You dilute the impact of your ideas. You invite unnecessary opinions. You lose the mystery that commands respect. And slowly, without realizing it, you become common but powerful. People are not common. They are intentional. They don't speak to fill space. They speak to shift outcomes. There is a discipline required here, the discipline of restraint. You must train yourself to ask this necessary. Is this adding value? Is this the right moment? If the answer is no, then silence is the pain. Superior choice, because every unnecessary word is a withdrawal from your authority. Understand this, your mouth can either build your future or betray it. Many people talk about their goals endlessly, but never execute. They feel productive because they are expressive, but expression is not progress. Talking about a plan is not the same as building it. In fact, excessive talking often replaces action. It gives a false sense of accomplishment. That is why some people speak loudly, achieve very little, while others move quietly and produce extraordinary results. You must become the second person, the one who thinks deeply, speaks selectively, acts decisively, because real power is not loud. It is focused. It is controlled. It is intentional. When you reduce unnecessary talking, something powerful happens. Your words gain weight. Your presence becomes stronger. People listen more carefully. Your actions become your voice. And suddenly, you don't need to convince anyone. Your results will speak for you. Silence preserves power because it forces you to become deliberate with your energy, your thoughts, and your presence. Most people underestimate how much strength is lost through unnecessary speech. Every word you release carries a piece of your focus. And when you speak without intention, you scatter that focus in all directions. Power by its nature requires concentration. It requires containment. When you are constantly explaining, reacting, or filling space with words, you are leaking that concentration. And with it, your influence. Silence, on the other hand, gathers your energy. It creates a sense of control, not only over your environment, but over yourself. When you choose not to speak immediately, you are no longer driven by impulse. You are operating from awareness. That awareness allows you to observe more, understand more, and respond with precision instead of emotion. And precision is where power lives. There is also a psychological dimension to silence that most people ignore. When you speak less, people pay more attention to what you do say. Your words begin to carry weight because they are not frequent or careless. Scarcity increases value. If you say everything, nothing stands out. But when you are selective, each word becomes significant. People lean in, they listen carefully, and they assign importance to your voice because you have trained them to expect meaning, not noise. Silence also protects your intentions. Many people lose power not because they lack ability, but because they expose their plans too early. When you talk excessively about what you are going to do, you invite opinions, doubts, and distractions that weaken your execution. Silence allows ideas to develop without interference. It gives you the space to refine your vision privately before presenting it publicly. By the time others see it, it is no longer fragile. It is established. There is strength in being misunderstood temporarily if it means maintaining control over your direction. Not every thought needs validation, and not every plan needs an audience. When you constantly seek to explain yourself, you position others as judges of your path. Silence removes that dynamic. It keeps authority where it belongs, with you. Another aspect of silence is emotional discipline. Talking too much is often a reaction, an attempt to justify, defend, or prove something. But power does not need constant defense. When you are grounded, you do not feel compelled to respond to every comment or engage in every conversation. You choose your moments carefully. That restraint signals confidence. It shows that you are not easily shaken or controlled by external stimuli. Silence also enhances your perception. When you are not focused on speaking, you begin to notice what others miss. You pick up on tone, behavior, and intention. You understand people more clearly because you are not competing to be heard. You are observing to understand. That awareness gives you an advantage in any environment because you can respond respond strategically instead of blindly. Silence preserves power because it aligns your actions with purpose. It removes unnecessary noise and forces you to operate with intention. Instead of using words to create the illusion of progress, you use discipline to produce real results. And when your actions begin to speak, your words no longer need to. Words are currency, and like any currency, their value is determined by how wisely they are used. When you speak, you are spending. Every sentence is a transaction. Every explanation is an investment or a loss. The problem is, most people spend their words carelessly without strategy, without awareness, and without understanding that overuse leads to devaluation. If a person hands out money to everyone at all times without purpose, that money loses meaning. In the same way, when you talk excessively, your words lose impact. They become common, predictable, easy to ignore. But when you treat your words like a limited resource, something begins to change. People start to pay attention because they recognize that when you speak, it matters. Corey is not powerful because it exists, and it's powerful because it is controlled. The same is true for words. Power does not come from saying more. It comes from saying what is necessary at the right time with precision. When you master that discipline, your voice carries weight far beyond its volume. Every conversation becomes a marketplace. You are either adding value or creating noise. If your words do not bring clarity, direction, or insight, they are not assets. They are liabilities. And liabilities drain your influence over time. People begin to tune you out, not because they disrespect you, but because you have trained them to expect excess instead of substance. Words should be invested, not wasted. An investor does not throw money into every opportunity. They analyze, they wait, they choose carefully. In the same way, you must develop the ability to hold your words until they can produce the greatest return. That return may be respect, understanding, or influence, but it only comes when your speech is intentional. There is also a compounding effect. When you consistently speak with purpose, your credibility grows. People begin to trust that when you say something, it is worth hearing. That trust becomes influence, and that influence becomes authority. But the reverse is also true. Careless speech compounds into doubt. Over time, even your important words lose their power because they are surrounded by too many unnecessary ones. Another dimension of this principle is emotional spending. Many people use words impulsively to react, to defend, to prove, but emotional spending is often reckless. It leads to regret, misunderstanding, and weakened positioning. When you allow emotions to control your speech, you are spending without calculation. Power requires restraint. It requires the ability to pause, to think, and to respond instead of react. Silence in this context becomes savings. It is what allows you to accumulate strength. The more you control your speech, the more value your words hold when you finally release them. And when you do speak, it is not noise, it is direction. It is not reaction, it is intention, understanding. That words are currency changes how you communicate. You stop trying to fill space. You stop explaining unnecessarily. You stop seeking validation through constant expression. Instead, you begin to operate with clarity and control. You recognize that not every moment requires your voice, and not every thought deserves to be spoken. And once you reach that level of awareness, something shifts. You are no longer just talking. You are transacting. You are no longer just expressing or influencing. Clarity reduces unnecessary communication because it eliminates confusion at the source. Most excessive talking is not driven by importance, but by a lack of precision. When people are unclear in their thinking, they compensate by using more words, repeating, explaining, rephrasing, and still failing to be understood. The issue is not communication itself. It is the absence of clarity behind it. When your thoughts are clear, your words naturally become fewer and sharper. You don't need long explanations because you already understand exactly what needs to be said. Clarity organizes your mind. It filters out the irrelevant and highlights the essential. As a result, what comes out of your mouth is direct, focused, and effective. Unnecessary communication often comes from uncertainty. When you are unsure, you tend to over-explain in an attempt to cover gaps in your understanding. You speak more, hoping that somewhere within your words, meaning will emerge. But this only creates more noise. It burdens the listener and weakens your message. Clarity removes that burden. It allows you to say the right thing once instead of many things repeatedly. There is also a discipline in clarity. It requires you to think before you speak, to process internally before expressing externally. This internal processing is what reduces the need for excessive conversation. Instead of figuring things out while talking, you figure them out in silence first. Then when you speak, you deliver a refined thought, not a raw stream of ideas. Clarity also respects time, both yours and others. When you communicate with precision, you reduce back and forth, misunderstandings, and corrections. You don't need follow-up explanations because your initial message message was strong enough to stand on its own. This efficiency is a form of power. It shows that you are not only aware of what you're saying, but also of how it impacts others. Another dimension is confidence. Clear people do not feel the need to convince excessively. They state their point and allow it to stand. Over-communication often signals doubt, an attempt to force agreement or validation. But when you are clear, you are grounded. You are not trying to overwhelm someone with words. You are guiding them with understanding. Clarity also creates boundaries in communication. It helps you recognize what needs to be said and what does not. Not every detail is necessary. Not every thought needs to be shared. When your mind is organized, you naturally eliminate excess. You focus only on what moves the conversation forward, and you let go of what does not serve a purpose. In environments where clarity is absent, communication becomes chaotic. People talk more, meetings become longer, and decisions take more time. But when clarity is present, everything becomes streamlined. Fewer words, faster decisions, stronger outcomes. This is why clarity is not just a communication skill. It is a strategic advantage. Clarity reduces unnecessary communication because it replaces quantity with quality. It transforms speech from a tool of expression into a tool of precision. Instead of using many words to search for meaning, you use the right words to deliver it. And in that shift, your communication becomes more powerful, more respected, and far more effective. Listening multiplies understanding because it shifts your focus from expression to absorption. Most people listen with the intention to reply, not to comprehend. Their mind is already preparing an answer while the other person is still speaking. In that state, they are not truly receiving information. They are filtering it through their own assumptions. That limits understanding. True listening is different. It requires stillness, attention, and the willingness to set aside your own voice temporarily. When you do that, you begin to notice more than just words. You pick up tone, intention, emotion, and meaning beneath the surface. What is said becomes only part of the message. How it is said and why it is said become equally important. That depth is what multiplies understanding. When you speak, you only express what you already know. But when you listen, you expose yourself to what you don't know. That is where growth happens. Every person carries a different perspective shaped by their experiences, and listening allows you to access those perspectives without having to live them yourself. In that way, listening expands your awareness far beyond your own limitations. There is also a strategic advantage in listening. The more information you gather, the better your responses become. Instead of reacting based on incomplete understanding, you respond with precision. You address the real issue, not just the surface conversation. This makes your words more effective because they are rooted in insight, not assumption. Listening also builds influence. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel heard. When someone senses that you are genuinely paying attention, they become more open, more cooperative, and more receptive to your ideas. In contrast, when you dominate conversations, you may feel in control, but you often lose connection. And without connection, influence is limited. Another layer of listening is patience. Understanding takes time. It cannot be rushed or forced. When you interrupt or jump to conclusions, you cut off the process before it is complete. But when you allow space for others to fully express themselves, clarity emerges, misunderstandings decrease, and communication becomes more effective with fewer words. Listening also sharpens judgment. Instead of relying on quick impressions, you gather enough information to see patterns and context. This prevents errors that come from partial knowledge. Many problems are not caused by a lack of intelligence, but by a lack of attention. Listening corrects that by forcing you to slow down and observe before deciding. There is strength in silence while listening. It shows discipline and control. It demonstrates that you are not driven by the need to be heard at all times. That restraint adds weight to your presence, because when you finally speak, it is clear that your words are based on careful consideration, not impulse. Listening multiplies understanding because it turns communication into a two-way exchange of value rather than a one-sided display of expression. It allows you to gather, process, and respond with depth. Instead of adding more noise, you create clarity. Instead of reacting quickly, you respond wisely. And in that process, your understanding doesn't just increase, it compounds. Over-explaining weakens authority because it signals uncertainty where there should be confidence. When a message is clear and grounded, it does not need excessive reinforcement. It stands on its own. But the moment you begin to repeat, justify, and stretch your point beyond what is necessary, you shift from delivering a message message to defending it. And defense often reveals doubt. Authority is not built through volume. It is built through conviction. When you trust what you are saying, you don't feel the need to surround it with layers of explanation. You state it and you allow it to land. Over-explaining, on the other hand, creates the impression that you are trying to convince rather than communicate. And when people sense that, they begin to question the strength of your position. Even if your point is valid, there is also a loss of clarity in over-explaining. The more you add, the more you dilute the core message. What could have been sharp and impactful becomes buried under unnecessary detail. The listener is forced to sift through excess information to find the point. And in many cases, the point loses its strength entirely. Precision commands attention. Excess weakens it. Over-explaining often comes from a desire for validation. It is the need to make sure everyone understands, agrees, or approves. But authority does not seek constant approval. It delivers direction. When you explain beyond what is required, you are no longer leading the conversation. You are negotiating your position within it. That shift reduces your influence because it places your confidence in the hands of others. Another dimension is control. Strong communicators control the pace and direction of their message. They know when to stop. They understand that silence after a statement is part of the communication. It gives space for the message to be processed. Over-explaining removes that space. It rushes to fill every gap as if silence is a weakness, when in reality, silence reinforces strength. There is also an element of trust. When you over-explain, you imply that your audience cannot grasp the idea without excessive detail. This can create disengagement. People respond better to concise, direct communication because it respects their ability to understand. When you trust your message and your audience, you don't feel the need to over-deliver words. Emotion plays a role as well. Over-explaining is often reactive. It happens when you feel challenged, misunderstood, or judged. In that state, you try to clarify everything at once, hoping to remove any possible doubt. But emotional communication lacks structure. It becomes scattered, repetitive, and less effective. Authority requires composure, the ability to remain steady and respond with intention rather than urgency. When you remove over-explaining, your communication becomes sharper. You say what is necessary and nothing more. This forces your words to carry weight because they are not surrounded by noise. It also positions you as someone who is certain, focused, and in control. Authority is not about saying everything. It is about saying enough. Enough to be understood, enough to move the conversation forward, and then having the discipline to stop. Discipline in speech reflects discipline in life because the way you control your words is a direct expression of how you control yourself. Speech is one of the fastest ways to reveal a person's inner state. If the mind is scattered, the words will be scattered. If the emotions are unstable, the speech will be reactive. But when there is discipline within, it shows up as restraint, clarity, and intention in communication. Most people think discipline is only about actions, waking up early, working hard, staying consistent. But discipline begins before action. It begins in thought, and it is revealed in speech. Your words are the bridge between what you think and what you do. If that bridge is uncontrolled, then your actions will eventually reflect that same lack of control. When you speak without thinking, you are demonstrating impulsiveness. You are allowing immediate feelings or passing thoughts to dictate your expression. That same impulsiveness does not stay limited to speech. It spreads into decisions, habits, and behavior. A person who cannot control what they say will struggle to control what they do. But a person who can pause, think, and choose